morning or afternoon, whatever it may be for you. And I wanted to get started real quickly. It looks like you saw me for 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can talk to you about what this system looks like when you're using this for the first time as a teacher. So I'm logged in with this pretend teacher account, Carmen, and this teacher, as you can see, she has just a little bit of activity here for 3 classes. She assigned these activities to her first, second, and fourth period. So if you are logged in as a new teacher, you would not have these. You have that video that hopefully you've all seen now, so you have somewhat a sense of orientation. So when you're logged in for the first time, you can explore your labs. I want to encourage you to start off with one of these tutorials. Now, I know that these might not be in the topic areas that you're teaching right now, but there's a lot going on in the world that is different than what we had planned. And these are a fantastic way for students to get oriented with Inq-ITS. So when they start off with one of these tutorials, they're going to be dealing with a topic that is just not as difficult as if they say jump straight into cells or collisions or something along those lines. And so when they start off with this tutorial, this is only qualitative data. So we're not actually presenting them with any numbers. They're not having to say whether they think something is going to increase by this amount or what have you. They're looking at qualitative data only. If you feel your students are a bit more advanced and they can handle quantitative data, so data with the numbers in it, then we can go ahead and I would encourage you to assign that. So once you assign that basic tutorial or the advanced tutorial, let's go through that. So you can enter, the first time it'll ask you to enter the names of your classes. If you use Google Classroom, you can go ahead and sync directly with Google Classroom. And then at this point, you have a choice to make. You can choose to publish this right now. So I could say, oh my gosh, I want my students to have this right now, and I'm going to make it due in 2 days, for example, and I could choose to publish this right now. Or I could decide that I don't want to do that, and so I'm going to go ahead and assign it, and so you can see what the difference is, what that looks like. So I'm going to assign those. So I only assigned it to my 4th period. So my 4th period, this is actually already pushed out. And so see, it's lined up with my 4th period. If you would like to go in later, like let's say I just saved that as a draft. At this point, I have 2 choices. I can send that out and publish it here. I can do that, or I can go ahead and go into Google Classroom. I can go to my classwork page, and then I can publish that from there. Now, if you don't use Google Classroom, or if you use Google Classroom and you have, like, let's say 1 Google Classroom that you use for all of your classes, in either of those cases, this shareable link is your best friend. So you can grab this shareable link and copy it, and that's for my 1st period class. And so I can send that out via email, LMS, or again, I could make 1 assignment in Google Classroom and put all of my classes in there and send that out to them right away. So once my students have started in on this tutorial, and I guess I can do a quick preview of this, they're going to get a welcome to Inq-ITS. So they're going to see the phases of inquiry that they're going through. So they're going to be talked through, this is what a goal is, an independent variable, a dependent variable. They're going to collect some data. They're going to have a chance to analyze that data. And then we're going to ask students to choose the evidence that supports their claim. This is a really difficult skill for students, not just students, let's be honest. It's a difficult skill for everybody to learn, but it's a very important skill for us to learn, and it's something that the science practices. It's essential. We need to know that this is the data that supports the claim that I'm making. And then finally, we're going to have them write about it in a claim evidence reasoning format. And for these tutorials, that is auto-scored for you. So you can see how your students are doing with that. So then we're going to move on, and we're going to get the introduction to this specific activity, which tells students that they're going to check these additives and see how that impacts the petal redness and loss over time. And then we can move on from here. And we have the ability to go straight into this one goal. So we're only going to do one goal for this tutorial. So they're going to read the goal, going to make their hypothesis. They're going to go in, collect some data, analyze that data, and then write about it in a claim evidence reasoning format. Now, once the students are done with that, they are being scored on their ability to create that hypothesis, on the investigation itself, rather than merely like some multiple choice questions. So once students get started on that, you can come here and you can see at a quick glance how your classes are doing. And then you can go ahead and either download, which some teachers really prefer to download and look at the information that way. And others prefer to see more of the visual. How are my students doing? This, I'm respecting student privacy. I want you to know these are pretend students, they're not actual students. That would not be very kind. And so we can see how we're doing here and go back and we could say, you know what, maybe because overall the scores were not, I mean, Hannah's doing pretty well, but Hannah at first, but then Hannah's really struggling with analyzing and then claim evidence reasoning. So maybe what I would decide to do after this basic tutorial is I would go ahead and there's a couple of different options. We have some resources for you here. I might choose to give, we have a student guide to science inquiry, and I could give that out to students and talk them through it, maybe record a quick video or something along those lines. And then we also have this claim evidence reasoning rubric, which is really, really helpful for students. Even students in high school advanced classes, many of them really struggle with knowing what to write, specifically in the reasoning section. So I found that even when I am in classrooms with higher level students, they might act at first like they don't need this rubric, but then once they start working, they're like, okay, yeah, I'll take it. And so it's really helpful to make this available to students. And then the other thing that you could do is this science practices rubric is very helpful as well, and just kind of helps students to know, okay, when I'm forming my hypothesis, this is how it's being scored. And so if I want a 4, this is what I need to have. And then the same thing for the other phases of inquiry that we're going through. And sometimes just having that rubric is very helpful, whether you do a video or talk to your students through it or provide them with that information that can help them to succeed. And then quite frequently, if teachers see those kind of lower scores, they might go through and assign the second tutorial in this set. So this first tutorial focuses on the goal of DIE, and there's no Rex the tutor in this first tutorial. As students move into the second tutorial, Rex is in the hypothesis phase only. And so Rex will make sure that they have a testable hypothesis. So this first tutorial is literally pure assessment, no assistance. And so sometimes students will get frustrated because they get to that data collection phase and they realize, oh man, I made a mistake in my hypothesis. And we tell students, you know what, as a scientist, we make our hypothesis and we collect our data and we either support or refute that hypothesis. And you can still get 100%, even if your hypothesis is incorrect. You just need to follow through with your hypothesis and either support or refute it. Then in this second tutorial, we're going to go ahead and ensure that they have Rex's help. So they will not leave that hypothesis phase without having a testable hypothesis. And then in this third tutorial, we're going to make sure that Rex is throughout the entire activity, the entire investigation, so that they are going to get Rex's assistance. And Rex the tutor does sometimes frustrate students because he pops up and he helps them and they need to read what he's saying, and he's helping to build those resiliency skills that we need our students to have. And so just reminding our students to read what Rex says is very, very helpful. And if you're interested in any of the research on how much Rex helps students improve in these critical thinking skills, we have that on our website under, it either says science or research. It's lots and lots of papers on how Rex helps students. Okay, so let's say that you're done with the tutorials. You say, okay, I'm ready to tackle a topic lab, and maybe right now you are going to do forces in motion. I would encourage you to, you could check out the details, and I actually have the middle school science NGSS standards listed here. But on our resources page, we also have the high school standards as well as individual state standards. And then you can go through and check out that pre-test, check out the post-test, and you can preview it ahead of time yourself. And you can make a decision about whether you want to give your students that multiple choice pre and post-test, and you know ahead of time what these goals are focused on. So in this lab, or in this investigation, we have 3 different goals, and each of those are centered around different misconceptions that students have. So roughness of the ramp impacting time, height of the tower impacts the velocity of the sled, and the mass of the sled impacting the force of the sled on the spring. And so students are gonna go through each of those. And so you can make a decision as to how you want to assign it to students. You could say when you assign it, go ahead and get this done in a couple of days. You could tell students ahead of time, finish maybe the introduction, the pre-test, and then this first goal, and then take a break and come back to it and do the second goal. Because when they go through all of the phases, when they're doing that hypothesis, data, analyzing, warranting, and then writing about it and claim evidence reasoning, it's a good idea if they take a break between each of these, or you'll see that they don't put as much effort into their writing if they try to do all of these in a row. And then they'll finish up with that post-test. And so you get to make the decision as the teacher, whether, as you're assigning this, so I'm gonna actually go through and assign this, whether you wanna have Rex help your students or not. So Rex, again, make sure they have a testable hypothesis. We have lots of data on how Rex helps students improve those skills. I also know that some students really dislike reading and Rex makes them, they have to read what Rex is saying to try to help them, and he helps them get better. And so I encourage you to use Rex once students are oriented with the system. But if you have students who you just know cannot handle being forced to read things, and maybe their emotional intelligence is maybe not where it needs to be, that is an option to turn Rex off. If you want to use this multiple choice pre and post test, you can choose to have it, or you can choose to turn it off if you feel like you just want to focus on the investigations themselves. So you can make that decision, and then you can choose whether you want to assign it now or send it out later, and then you can go ahead and assign that to your classes. And then again, you could push it out if you use Google Classroom, or you could grab this shareable link and send it via email, LMS, or however it is that you are getting information to your students. So at that point, you'd have much more data in the reports. We found that when you, so we have, I have pretty limited data here in my reports, but we have found through many years, I saw this with my own students, that once they got to about 4 and 5 labs, I saw really significant improvement in the individual students. And at that point, you'll be able to click into individual student reports, and you'd be able to see multiple labs, and you'll be able to see the orange slowly turning as they go through labs, turning to all blue. And so it's really nice to see that improvement in your students. And obviously, you need more than 1 lab to be able to see that improvement. And I really started to see significant improvement in my students at about the 4th or 5th lab. It was quite remarkable to see that. Every single one of my students had improvement, literally 100%. And I include in that my students who were double exceptional, IEP and English language learners. Every single one of my students had improvement. And I really started to see huge improvement about the 4th or the 5th lab. So Inq Blotter is when students are working in real time. So if you're holding like classroom time and you have a Google Hangout open or Zoom call or whatever open, and students can just hop on and you can message with students during your usual class time or whatever it is, you would be able to see their work in real time with Inq Blotter. But I don't have any students working right now, and so mine is going to be blank. But you would be able to see alerts here if students were struggling, if you're doing if you're assigning it during a specific period of time and you know when your students are working. You can, at any time, if you want to change your classes or your sign-in information. So let's say you sign in with Google, but you want to add Clever or the other way around, you can do that here. And then you can also manage your classroom sections. Let's say I started off with my first 4 classes, but maybe I had 2 more and I wanted to add those. I could go ahead and do that here. That's settings, and then manage classroom sections. And then again, we have quite a number of resources from the help and resources. Okay, Cam or Amanda, did either of you want to say anything, or or are there questions that I should answer that I have not answered? I think you both were muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, I think that it's been pretty quiet in the chat. And I think that you covered, definitely covered quite a bit, at least of the basics and getting everybody started. If anybody does have questions, this is a great time to, you can either type it into the chat or we can give them a moment to unmute themselves and ask a question. They come up with the questions.
Anybody? I don't see any hands raised or anything there. Want to make sure that I'm getting your questions answered if you had any questions.
Well, do we have mostly middle school teachers or high school teachers on the line here? Because that could be maybe change the way that you'd want to introduce it, or change the way that you would utilize this in your classes.
Oh. So Michelle, you're elementary, but you're here for your middle school. But we have some 5th grade teachers who do use this. And I think they do it in kind of a structured format where they start the students off with the tutorial and then advance them pretty slowly, moving through the information, and use it kind of like a unit, preparing for state tests and making sure that they're improving in these skills and being able to show that to their administrators at the end of the year. But definitely the vast majority of our users are our middle school teachers, and then we have quite a number of physical science high school teachers using Inq-ITS as well. And so, great, Michelle. Amanda, I know you got started using Inq-ITS yourself within the last year-ish.
Yeah, and I actually use it with the biology, high school biology classes. And sometimes I'll use them to scaffold through a unit, something similar to what you were saying before with like what elementary school teachers may want to do, using parts of the lab for different parts of the unit as I'm teaching. One of the great things about Ink Blotter is being able to see as they're struggling with an issue, you can kind of go over to that student when you're actually in a classroom. But we don't really know when that's going to happen next. But Charlie, you were saying great ideas about other ways to use the digital tools to have some form of a in-person time. I know some schools are using the same time that they would be using in the class if they were in the building, and using that as part of that for like a synchronous portion to their classes today, and that would be a great way to do it.
Yeah.
One thing I don't know if we really went into is the reports.
Yes, so I'm actually doing a specific training tomorrow on reports where we'll delve into reports in detail. But I think that the important thing to know is that we start, when you first log in, you're looking at it by class and activity. And then if you want to look at your individual students in a visual format, you could go ahead and click on the magnifying glass and see how those individual students are doing. And then when you have that check mark, that means that they're done. And the orange and the 25 both mean that this student, Julian, is struggling. And then as you're getting light blue, they're approaching proficiency, doing a bit better. And then you can see Hannah has the dark blue over here. So Hannah's doing well, is at proficiency with these skills, but really struggling later on, which this is exactly what we would expect as far as these skills are just so much harder for students. Those analyzing, warranting their claims, and then writing their claim evidence reasoning. Those are not easy skills for students to learn. And so we would expect to see that. And then some teachers prefer to get this in a downloaded format. So if that's what you would prefer, you can go ahead and get this in a downloaded format, and then you can look at it there. And so some teachers prefer to do this and to actually scroll over and to read, read those claim evidence reasoning. So read through all of the claims in a row. And obviously I could freeze my first column so that it would scroll over with me. And then I could read each of the claim evidence reasoning for my students all at once. And some teachers prefer that way, and some teachers prefer just to have this visual picture. It's really what's going to work the best for you. And I will go into much more detail about that on tomorrow's webinar.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, no problem. So other than Michelle, I don't really see any questions. Cam, if you're still on the line, is there anything I didn't speak about that you wanted me to?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could walk through a little bit of just like how to find out what the labs are, what's available.
Yeah.
And just a little bit deeper into that in terms of just like where you might want to look, etc.
Okay. So exploring your labs, once you feel good about your students being able to tackle the premium labs, so more content, right? More content heavy. So physical science, you have a number of labs here, and this is a good place for me to tell you that introduction, we literally mean it's a little bit easier than the advanced labs. So just kind of be cognizant of that, because the A is alphabetical, so that comes first, even though you want to start off with the introduction rather than the advanced activity. Unless your students are a higher level, then go for it. So we have like energy free fall, which is the ball is being dropped in a vacuum, whereas energy and air resistance, the ball is actually going to encounter some air resistance. And then we have just different things like forces in motion. This is an introduction, it's all on Earth. And then planetary bodies, the kiddos can actually switch planets, which the kids enjoy, but I really enjoy too. And then we have gravity and mass introduction, gravity and orbit distance. Anyway, so quite a number of different labs. Please read through the descriptions, preview them, kind of see the difference. Like there are a number of different activities for waves. And so really find the one that works the best for you if that's something that you need to do. And waves on a string introduction and waves on a string advanced are basically the same lab, except waves on a string introduction, we're going to give the kiddos both the independent variable and the dependent variable in their goal. Whereas here with waves on a string advanced, we're expecting the students to have more finely grained skills. And so we're going to give them determine how the loudness changes, and they need to figure out how they can write a quality hypothesis just given that information. So this works really well for more advanced students. Okay, and then we're going to scroll down to life science, quite a number of activities for life science. And then we're going to scroll down to earth science. And in that earth science, we have a number of those where we have the introduction gives them both the independent variable and the dependent variable, and the advanced activity gives them just one, and they have to do a bit more work to come up with their testable hypothesis. So yeah. Pam, did you want me to go into more detail, or is that?
No, just Charity, can you give me a sense of how long it would take for someone or a student to go through one of these assignments?
Yes, so let's say I do collisions in elastic trains. So reading through the introduction doesn't take very long. Should take 2 minutes or so. And then the pretest, depending on the kiddo, I would say somewhere between 3 and 10 minutes. I would plan on each of these investigations taking somewhere around 15 minutes. And then the post-test generally about 8 minutes-ish. Sometimes if they get really detailed on their claim evidence reasoning, it would take more than 15 minutes to do their writing. But we always have the outliers, right? Have the students who just speed through, and then the students who really think about every single step. So we definitely have the outliers, and particularly for those students who think through every step, it's a really good idea to at least encourage them, like take a quick break, go get a drink of water or a snack or something, and then come back. Because you really want them to do the best job they possibly can on each of these goals, and let them know ahead of time that it's going to be scored. It's going to be automatically scored, because as you are seeing those dark blue, light blue, and orange, the students are actually going to see stars. So the students will be able to see their progress, and they'll be able to see how they're scoring on these assignments. And so letting them know ahead of time, this is going to be automatically scored, can really make a difference in how well they, or how much effort, I guess, they put into it. Because, you know, when they know it, a lot of times with online activities, they just do it and then they like fill out a worksheet, or they just tell you, hey, I'm done. Whereas with this, everything they do is being scored, and students just often are not used to that. And so it's a good idea to let them know ahead of time. Yeah, Michelle, an hour is a good, yeah. With the tutorials, I say plan on 15 to 20 minutes. And then with these more advanced labs, I'd say a third to a half of my students could complete one of these in a 47-minute class period. And then I would have some students who needed some time the next morning to finish it up.
Charity, do you feel like in a distance learning situation that timeline is likely to go up or down?
Both. Having spent years in the classroom, I know that both is true, right? Because you'll get some students who will speed through it. And so that's why it's really important to let students know ahead of time that it's going to be scored. And then you'll get other students that, because they're not, you know, Bobby next to them isn't like, are you done yet? Are you done yet? And they're not seeing how quickly other people are progressing, then and if they know it's scored ahead of time, then they're going to put forth more effort. And if they have those rubrics, that really, really helps them to know what to write. And when they know what to write, then they tend to write more. And so you get more of an honest assessment as to their skills, but it also, you know, can take them longer, because quality writing takes longer than fast, quick, I just want to be done writing. So yeah, definitely say could take a little bit longer for students who do a really good job. I think too that, like, if I sat down, right? If I sat down and I was just like, I'm just going to do a really good job and do this part of it would probably take me somewhere around 30, you know, if I was a student who was trying to do a really good job. This part would take me about 30, 35 minutes. And then this part would take about 15. But they're going to do a better job if they take a little bit of a break in between. And then again, about 20 minutes probably to finish. So hopefully that helps. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm also happy to just to end and be done if you feel like you have a lot going on and you need to get things moving. I want to be here and help answer your questions. And so if you have any specific questions about using this with Google Classroom or with an LMS, please let me know. One of the things I've run into, the questions I've had the last couple of days, is telling your students, if you use Google Classroom, to mark their activity as done after they actually see it as done. So when you're a student and you're logged in, you will see, instead of this like next step stuff, you'll see they actually get a done when they're all the way done. And at the point where they get that green done, they should go back to Google Classroom and mark it as done. And then you can see their progress in reports, and they can actually see their progress and how they did as well immediately. You don't need to score it, they just see it. And then I'm going to go ahead, and Michelle asked for my email address, so I'm just putting it in the chat. And it's just charity@apprentice.com. Any questions?
Charity, would you say that it's important for a teacher to sort of preview the activities before they assign them, or once they are familiar with the format, they can do it without that preview?
I think it's a good idea to preview the activities, particularly because being familiar with, first of all, it's good to read the introduction, which takes, a minute or less. And then reading through the pre and post to make sure that you want to assign them is important. And then at least being familiar, like you don't need to run through all 3 of these labs, but at least getting to the point where you see what the data collection section looks like and of this first one, and then knowing what the goals are, right? So if you run through roughness of the ramp and how that impacts time to the end of the ramp, it's just at least a good idea to know that one of the goals they're going to be working on later is that mass of the sled impacting the force of the sled on the spring. I will really briefly tell you that when students are coming back and saying that they're having a difficulty with this system, if you have somebody who says they're having a difficulty, quite often that is because of add-ons they've added in Chrome. So my first step would be to ask a student for a screenshot of their screen to see what's going on. If they can open in their console, that's Control-Shift-I, and if there's anything over here, and get that in a screenshot, that's helpful. But even if they don't know to do that, or they struggle with that part of it, it's really just helpful to get a full screenshot, because a lot of times students have added some crazy stuff onto their Chrome, and it's nice to be able to see that and be like, well, they need to turn off their ad blocker or whatever it is that is messing with things. That's usually what it is they've added something crazy into their Chrome. So it's very helpful to be able to have that information. Let me see, refresh is your best friend. Just hitting refresh, because students, it seems like some students have a hard time focusing on like getting the claim evidence reasoning done. So if they start in on it, our system does automatically save their work. But let's say they started in on the claim and then they got a text from a friend and they came back an hour later. If they, the system might have gone stale, but if they refresh, the system will go back. We saved all of their work, but refresh is a very good friend. I think that takes care of the vast majority of questions I've had in the last couple of weeks as we all navigate this craziness. I'm staring out at some beautiful Japanese cherry blossoms. They are beautiful, and I wish I could share them with all of you, but my camera apparently is not working today. So I hope you all have beautiful flowers that you can look at and hopefully take a nice walk at some point and see some flowers and get out, so you're not just huddled next to your computer all day. But if you are huddled next to your computer, please reach out if you have questions. Okay, if there are no other questions. Oh no, Michelle, gloomy and rainy. No, I want to send you my flowers. Yeah, I want to send you the flowers. It's nice. And also rain jackets help. trying to get what we can. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful day. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you for stopping by. And tomorrow I am doing a webinar specifically on reports. And so but that's every week. So if you're ready for that reports webinar, then please join us tomorrow. And if you are not, then it's every Wednesday for the foreseeable future. So please let us know if you have any questions. Hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.